Well, it seems there actually are solutions to solve the funding crisis in higher education. According to BEE Novation, tapping into SETAs is actually one of them, as they're sitting on billions of rands of unspent money, which could be better spent and used on more effective and impactful programs. Right, to talk more on this, I'm joined by transformation consultant and the managing director at BEE Novation, Mr. Lee du Preez. Thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. Well, you're saying that government or the Department of Higher Education seems to be missing an opportunity here, and that is within SETAs. Tell me more.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, so the SETAs are currently sitting on a couple of billion of rands of unspent money. Now, for anybody who's not aware of the role of the SETAs, their job is to further the cause of higher education and ensure that people who most need the upskilling are able to access those kinds of opportunities funded through SETA funds and usually channeled through a training provider and with a partnership with the host company. Now, many of the SETA's programs or some of the implementation partners or training providers they're using are sometimes not as effective as they could be, and so we find that we don't always get as good a result as possible. But specifically focusing on the protests that we're seeing currently, I think the SETAs should seriously consider channeling some of that spend into the current higher education crisis and ensuring that fewer students are financially excluded.
But why do you think, the department hasn't gone the SETA route? Why do you think they adamant, or rather still would resonate and reiterate rather that, there's a shortfall with NSFAS? NSFAS seems to be the only access to resources with which students can gain access to when there are institutions such as our SETAs.
I'm not sure what the internal dynamics are, and I'm not sure what the politics behind that is, unfortunately. But it seems that where the opportunities lie, they're not too willing or keen to pursue that for whatever their reasons may be. But there is another avenue that could, it already does add quite a bit of support to the higher education and financially excluded students, but it could be better used, and that's the BEE scorecard. So on the skills development elements of the BEE scorecard, companies are incentivized to spend a percentage of their payroll on higher education interventions. Now, that's a direct result of the fees must fall protest. Now, that spend is not just, companies are not just encouraged to spend it to cover fees, but they can even cover food costs and accommodation costs for students and still gain the benefit for those particular interventions. So we mustn't only focus on the SETAs. There's also better opportunities for companies to channel that funding into those higher education institutions, both private and government, to be able to support these students better.
And you're saying that while they channel those fundings, there's also incentives for these companies as well?
That's correct. So the incentives on the BEE scorecard are that they can gain additional points from doing that. And in fact, it's actually an ecosystem because once those companies get those points on their BEE scorecard for supporting those higher education learners, they have an additional incentive thereafter to employ them through perhaps the YES initiative, which can help those beneficiaries, which can help the company gain a 1 or 2 level increase on their scorecard while giving Black unemployed youth an opportunity at a job for a first time. So I think we really need to look at the entire ecosystem a lot better.
Yeah.
It's not just the SETAs, it's not just skills elements on the BEE scorecard, but still talking to your point about incentives, companies that are willing to put beneficiaries on learnerships, for example, are able to claim an 80,000 Rand tax rebate. So there's lots of incentives that government has put in place. In some cases, companies don't leverage those properly, and in other cases, the spend is not used as effectively as possible.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much, Lee du Preez, BEE Novation, MD, for joining us.